Costello and another episode of the Kadoozie Kast. And I'm very excited. I'm in Los Angeles, Hollywood, and I'm sitting here with Mr. David DeLuise, and I'm very excited. Hi,
What's up?
You're on the big Kadoozie Kast. It's huge. You know that, right?
I do.
You're going to get tons of fans from this.
Every once in a while, I'm just going to say Kadoozie.
That's my nickname.
I love it.
All the guys call me that because
Where did you get that?
My friend's son said Susie Kadoozie one day, and I wrote it on Facebook, and every single person said, "Please refer to yourself." They just started. They call me the Kadoozie.
So that's new.
Yes.
At Facebook, how long has Facebook been happening?
For me?
Yes, for you.
Facebook has been happening for me for like 5 years or something, I think, right?
I guess I'm around there. I was a late bloomer on the Facebook. My kids kind of forced me to do it, and I was like, I don't want to do social media. Now Instagram, tweet, and Facebook, and it's interesting. This is just my perspective that this social media stops us from actually interacting with each other. I mean, how many times do you go out to dinner and people are on their Facebook and on their phone, but they're not interacting?
I agree, and I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's why people like the podcasts.
Yeah.
Because it forces two people to sit down.
And talk.
Yeah, because I put your phone in the fridge. So you can't use it.
That you got me. I had no comeback for that.
And I made you coffee, right?
Which is delicious.
But I don't have any sugar.
That's okay. You're sweet enough.
All right.
The funny thing is, I was getting a thing of orange juice. And you set your shit down, right? You set your phone down. And then I'm looking for my phone. I'm like, where? Oh, looking everywhere. And I was like, I gave up. And then I went and got some water. And I saw that I had left it in the fridge.
See?
For real.
People do that.
But don't tell anybody that story. It's between us.
All right. Well, we know where to get all your secret naked pictures in the fridge. All right, so do we need to have full disclosure? Do we need to tell people our history before we do this? I think they'll pick up on it if we don't tell them.
Okay.
We have to tell them that we dated.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, it was so funny on Twitter. Everybody was like, how did you get David DeLuise? How'd you get David DeLuise? I'm like, because I used to date him. And all the guys that I used to date still like me.
This is true. I have one person who doesn't like me that I dated. Well, I married her. And now she loathes me.
Yeah, but you got married really young, right?
Yeah. Well, I had a baby, Riley, who's 19 now, when I was 21. Stop doing the math. And then I got married when I was 23. And my dad married us.
He did?
Yeah. And
everybody knows that your dad was Don DeLuise.
Yes, he was David DeLuise. Don DeLuise, yeah. So when we went to get the marriage license, my dad's not a reverend. Mm-hmm. So we went to the Church de Guadalupe, which doubled as an accounting office. And I said, the woman was like, did the papers, and she's like, you're married. And I was like, oh, could you ask us the question, just so we do it? And she said, Brigitte Claudine Beatty, do you? And I said, your middle name is Claudine? I had no idea. What was I getting into? So then when we did get married, my dad, unbeknownst to me, had been ordained through the internet. You can do that.
Hilarious.
So he was official,
And he wanted it probably to be done. He probably wanted you to get married and do the right thing. Because I will say that about you. You do always try to do the right thing.
Thank you for saying that. But I mean, it's being willing to try to do the right thing rather than having malicious intent, right?
Yes. Well, you mean people try to do the right thing with a malicious intent behind it?
No. If you're doing what you think is the right thing and being there for others or trying to do, good.
Yeah.
But then it backfires and you end up doing something that is damaging.
Yes.
As long as you're not like, ooh, I'm going to get that person beforehand.
Well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's what that is. That's where that saying comes from.
Listen.
What?
I think I should stop having good intentions if I'm going to go to hell.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's talk about when we went on a date and Dan Naturman came with us. Do you remember?
God, yeah.
Oh my God, this is the life of being a female comedian with the socially awkward comedian guys. Okay.
It was weird. It was really weird.
Well, first of all, for people who don't know Dan Naturman, he's fucking hilarious, but he's a little bit nerdy. He was on Last Comic Standing with me, and he killed. He crushed so badly on Last Comic Standing, and he didn't win because it was fixed the year I was on. I never felt so bad for anybody.
Time out.
What?
It was fixed?
Yes.
Like they chose...
The people who were going to win before we even performed.
Really?
Yes, and it was on the TV, so I can say it, because Brett Butler whipped her headphones off and freaked out and said, this is bullshit, I didn't vote for these people.
Wow.
Yes, and then left and said, as she was walking by, she's like, I'm sorry, Sue. Yeah. So Dan Naturman killed like he's never killed in his entire life, and he never, because they had already picked the people, it didn't even matter.
That's crazy.
So maybe we were feeling the aftermath of that, but I'm not sure. But we were sitting outside. It was like the first time we hung out. We were sitting outside at coffee shop.
Yeah.
And first of all, you did the pratfall for me.
I love to do pratfalls. If you go to David DeLuise Slips and Falls on YouTube, everybody can see.
Oh, come on. I thought you just did it for me. See?
We used to do that, me and my brothers, before, video cameras and YouTube. We'd go into Westwood and, everybody would go off to the side, and then there'd be someone walking down the street, and we would slip and fall in front of them. Most people walk around you and keep going.
They do?
But every once in a while, you'll get someone who actually stops and helps you up, and, which is...
Most people in L.A., they just walk around you?
Yeah.
Really? Oh.
Are you shocked by that? Don't you know that everybody...
I used to do a joke about that, about how New York is like, they're right in your face, but in L.A. they'll trip you and help you up. But no, they don't help you up.
I will say this, too. We're in New York with my dad. We used to go back there all the time during, the holidays, because that's where the family is. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to figure out the time. I think my brother Peter was 16. In New York, everybody's walking and they're busy, right? And Peter goes, why don't you just ask someone? And my dad was like, I'll give you $1 if you can get someone to stop and get the time. It took 5 minutes, but he eventually got someone. But he was like, oh my God, everybody's moving so fast. Side note, different story. If you're in New York, this is a very fun thing to do. You stand in a group and you look up to the tip top of a building and you just mutter to each other do you think he's gonna jump? I don't know. Do you think? And then everyone will stop because they want to watch someone, jump to their death. And it's awesome because, the buildings are so high. People are looking do I see someone?
I can't even listen to your stories now because I'm absolutely emotionally devastated that you do that pratfall for everybody. I'm so gullible.
I don't do it for everybody.
It was funny, though. I asked you to do it. You told me you could do it, and I said, please do it. And you did it, and we laughed. And then Dan Naturman, we were sitting outside, and he showed up, and he sat down with us. Remember, he was like, hi. And I was like, hi. And then he just sat down.
See, now there is, this is a very Larry David thing. There's an appropriate thing, like the cutoff to call someone, right. I believe is 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And, when you run into someone, and they are at a booth or a coffee shop or whatever, you do not sit unless you are asked.
Right.
And I do not. Not until I'm asked to sit do I sit.
But that's what I mean by being a female comic and knowing all these comics that tend to sometimes be socially awkward. This is what happens. You're on a date and a comedian shows up and he sits down with you. And he literally stayed there for an hour.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And I remember seeing him afterwards thinking full on that when I tell him what the hell was he doing, he's going to have a natural response because now he must know. And I was like,
he did.
Dan, no. Dan, what are you doing? I was on a date. And you sat down with me. He's like, what do you want? That guy was funny. I was having a good time. I was like, why don't you date him? He'll do a pratfall for you.
He's not my type. So the show that I'm on, Wizards of Waverly Place,
yes, which we have
won the best children's programming Emmy. Now, it wasn't the real Emmys. It was the Creative Arts Emmys. But I did a slip and fall prank.
At the Emmys?
When we went up on stage. And I broke my collarbone.
Wait a minute. I was going to ask you if you ever hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But I broke my collarbones 3 times.
Well, I shattered mine. And I was in shock.
Are you trying to talk
me? And the producer gave his speech. And then I went backstage. And I went up to the line producer, Greg Hampson. And I was like, Greg, I just broke my shoulder. And he goes, are you kidding?
Yeah.
And I said, No. And at that moment, sweat, just like as if someone poured a bucket of water in my head, just sweat came down my face. And then I went to the hospital, California hospital downtown, and within 2 days, I had a surgery.
Oh, you had to have surgery?
Yeah, and this is the worst part. I only missed one show, and it was fine. But if you watch those episodes, I'm doing everything with my left hand. You know, my right arm is just kind of down. But I'm an idiot. And
Thank you for finally admitting it.
Yeah, and I was moving. So, you know, I was supposed to be in bed and taking care of myself after the surgery. And I was going downstairs in my slippers. And I slipped.
Oh.
And I knocked my elbow. And that is my plate coming out of my shoulder, out of my collarbone. So there's a protrusion coming out. It looks like my bone, but it's just a plate. And
so you broke it, you were supposed to take care of it, and then you fell on it again, and then did you have to get a plate afterwards, or the plate just popped out was that from the surgery?
It popped out afterwards. There's a plate on it because there wasn't enough, like, bone to...
Oh, you really shattered it?
Yeah.
Because I broke mine just in, like...
Listen, Sue, when I do something, I do it full out.
I was thinking Chris Farley when you said that. I was like, he used to just go all out, and sometimes...
Now I'm healed enough to get back to some pratfalls.
Let's do it right now. Let's break your other collarbone. No, breaking your collarbone is excruciatingly painful, but I was going to say because the way it heals is it clangs together, but yours necessarily wasn't clanging
right, because
together.
it broke, and then shattered in the middle.
You really went all out for that pratfall.
I'm fine now.
Did you get anything from it? Did Dan Naturman show up?
I did a Vicodin. I got that.
All right.
And then the next day I did a half, and then the next day I did another half, and that was it.
And that's all you got out of it?
But I got a little Vicodin. Come on.
Nobody saw you and thought, oh,
but
my
then
God.
that Vicodin, if anybody's taking it, it really stops you up, which is a pain in the butt. Literally.
Makes you constipated.
Yeah.
Because you just said before we turned the microphone on that you almost shit your pants. And I always say that. And I remember, it's Boston. It's very Boston. I can't believe you said that because everything in Boston is shit. I remember when I first started dating this guy from New York.
He shit his pants?
No, from New York. And he was like a proper guy and whatever. And I was out here shooting a pilot. I was in my dressing room. And I was nervous about something. And I was like, oh, I hope this pilot doesn't shit the bed. And all of a sudden, there was complete silence on the other side, on the other line. And I felt, that feeling where you're like, uh-oh. And he's like, oh, what did you just say? I'm like, shit the bed, If it shits the bed, if it doesn't work out. And he's like, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
Did you guys have sex after that?
He was in New York, I was in L.A. Okay. But yes, we did.
I'll tell you my shit my pants story for real.
You really did?
I think I was 7 or 8. And me and my brother Michael were fed up with life at home. So we packed a backpack with like fruit rolls and cookies and water.
Wait a minute, what could you be fed up with at home?
I don't know. I was 7 or 8. I don't know what the hell was going on. I still don't know what's going on. But we ran away and we walked about 4 blocks. I can't believe I'm telling this story. And then I had to go to the bathroom. And I couldn't hold it. And I shit myself. And I just sat there. And Michael was like, I'll go home and get a car to drive us back. And I'll never forget that as long as... it's not every day you shit your pants.
No, and he couldn't get a car. He was only home.
No, he went home to, either my mom or a housekeeper or whatever came and got me and hosed me down, basically.
Really?
Yeah, it was gross.
But you've never done that again?
I didn't say that.
See, I'm an investigative reporter. I go deep. You told me.
I had no idea we were going to talk about so much shit.
But you told me before we turned the
sharted once.
Because I told you that I was at lunch with Al Roker. He was at the table next to me, and I couldn't stop thinking about his shark story. Because he told the story that he did it when he was interviewing... He was at the president or something, and he
sharted?
Because of his operation that he had on his stomach.
Oh, that's awful.
And so he sharted. And so
I'll say this. I was not with the President of the United States. I did not shart. But a little story about the President. My dad was invited to the Italian-American dinner or whatever when Bill Clinton was in office. Mm-hmm. And my dad went up to Bill Clinton and said, Mr. President, do you mind taking a picture? And he said, Dom, no problem. And my dad handed him the camera and then had the President take a picture of him and Danny DeVito.
Hilarious.
And then someone snapped a shot of that, which was, who has the balls to say, will you take a picture?
But that's what made you dad. What did I watch online? I texted you that I think my dad showed it to me. Your dad was on Carson.
The egg trick, yeah.
Oh my God, the egg trick. He was so silly. I love how funny he was without being mean.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know what he did at home, but...
I was locked in the closet for a week. That's why I ran away.
That's why I shit my pants.
No, my dad was very Italian, loving. His father never said, I love you to him. Mm-hmm. So because of that, he said it to us, me and my brothers, all the time. But he was, he was Italian, so he would yell. And he would say, what were you thinking? And I was like, why are you yelling? He's like, I'm not yelling. I'm just Italian, But he was great. I miss him. And he was, there's not a day that doesn't go by that someone doesn't say, oh, I loved your father, or he was so great, or he touched me, or he actually did this thing. Like, he would fly, and the stewardess, flight attendant, whatever, every once in a while, if he liked someone, he would write a letter to the airline like, this person was super sweet and nice. And, he was like always going out of his way to be there for others, And
he was a huge influence on you. I remember we watched Fatso.
Yeah.
He was so proud. Yeah,
and Anne Bancroft directed that. And me and my brothers are at the very end, at the credits. Like, he keeps having kids, mm-hmm. Like they keep multiplying. So it's funny.
And how did he die?
There were so many things going on, but
did he have? I think you told me. Did he have something wrong with his pain?
He had colon cancer, which he had put to bed. He had heart stuff. He had diabetes. He was overweight, mm-hmm. And eventually his body just gave out, his kidneys or whatever. But he had been in the hospital, over 2 years, a bunch of times, and I realized at one point, I called my brother who lives up in Canada, and I said, Peter, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And he goes, how do you think I feel? Every time I leave, I don't know if it's the last time I'm going to see him or not. Oh, shit. I put my coffee down on a book, and it made a ring. All right. So I realized at that point that it's not about me. I was being selfish. Mm-hmm. That what I could do for him was while he's here, not focus on his death, but spend time with him and enjoy him and pray for him, right? So I did that, and we spent a lot of time together. He was my go-to. I'd call him 2-3 times a day, and whenever I needed advice. And I was lucky. I got to have that conversation with him where I was like, all right, here we go. It's like that, I love you and thank you for everything. And you're, like that conversation you want to have with someone if you don't get to, if they, pass away in a car accident and it's sudden. But I got that, and he had written a note that morning because I think he knew what was going to happen. He said, this is Dom DeLuise and I don't want, it was like, a little jumbled, the writing, but he said, I don't want to be on, don't put me on a machine. I'm ready. And I got there, my mom called me, I got there at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and he was very out of it. Still was there, but out of it. Mm-hmm. And, there was a lot of like, we're here, and we called my brother Peter, who was in Canada, and he got on a plane immediately. And he got there at 6 o'clock. He walked into the room, and he told my dad that he was there. And again, he was totally out of it. And then at 6:20, he passed away, but he waited. Mm-hmm. He waited till Peter got there, so Peter wouldn't have to deal with the the emotion of missing being there. So I thought that was pretty cool.
You hear that a lot. That happened with my friend recently. She waited, she held on until somebody was flying in from California.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that crazy?
But she chose the same thing to not. And I found that when you just said that, as soon as you decided to not make it selfish, because I feel like that would, like, as you were talking about your dad with all his health problems, I was like, how hard it is to love somebody who doesn't always take care of themselves.
Yeah. Well, it was weird. He was always dieting, and food was his drug of choice. Mm-hmm. You'd open the sock drawer and you're like, why is there a Hershey bar in here? I don't get what's going on.
No, the food stuff is confusing.
And that you stepped into my dad's house, instantly the first question was, do you want a sandwich? Mm-hmm. And I would say, Dad, I just ate. You know, I'm good. And he was like, all right. So we'd sit down and talk, and he'd make you a sandwich.
Right.
And he'd put it over there. And then after 3 hours of talking, you know, you'd take a bite, and he would go, I knew it. Right?
It's very Italian, though. It's very cultural, too, the food stuff. Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat?
Yeah, if you don't eat, then you're miserable.
Yeah.
There's something wrong if you're not eating. You
right.
know? It's all about food.
Well, food is very fascinating because some people eat too much, some people don't have enough. But you said that until you stopped making it, until you weren't selfish saying you can't do it.
Sure.
You were able to have that experience with him. I remember this girl was talking about, same thing, they were on life support, the mom or something. And I don't know if the mom was on a drug addict or something. And she was so mad because she took the mother off life support and she lived.
Holy macaroni.
Yeah. And she was so mad, and I remember it was the first time it ever clicked for me where I was like, oh, we don't have any control over...
Well, we didn't have to turn off the machine, per se. It was a matter of, you know, he wasn't walking. He needed assistance to get out of his bed and stuff like that. And, I mean, he still was cooking.
He was.
But... It was
probably an art for him too, so it was probably very
his therapy.
Convoluted.
You know, it was his way of feeling good. But there was like the dialysis machine, which is you come into the hospital twice a week, and you know it prolongs your life X amount of time, and that's what he was referring to. He was like, I don't want that. You know, he died at 75 and. When he turned 75, I was like, I thought you were 74. I said, what's the difference between 74 and 75? And he said, not a lot.
And he does sound like he was awesome. And 75 isn't such a bad age to go, right?
And I'm very lucky. I have so much home footage. I have all his act. You know, every once in a while I'll turn on the TV and I get to see my dad, you know. So I'm lucky in that sense that I get to experience him on a regular basis and get to see him.
And you carry on his funny, his silliness and everything, which is awesome. But also I want to ask you, since we're talking about that, so all right, so yes, he was your dad, he was awesome, but how do you get people, like, it must be weird to have people say it to you all the time, like there must have been a time in your life where you're like, I want my own identity.
Yeah. But he was so good. It was not bad. I think that was part of the driving force. I mean, we grew up in the Palisades. You know, we didn't want for anything. But like he was smart. I had to get a job. I worked at a restaurant as a busboy. I sold yogurt when yogurt wasn't so popular, and I had to pay for half of my first car.
Awesome.
So, I mean, he definitely instilled a work ethic in me. You know, like, we would go out, and every once in a while, we wouldn't really get to experience our dad at dinner because other people were occupying his time. He was very good at, like, hi, how are you? Yeah, take a picture. Good. Where's your father from? Oh, my God, okay. You know, he was able to maneuver it so it was as quick as possible. But also... we got to do things like go to Burt Reynolds' house and hang out and watch a movie there before people had like screening rooms. And my dad would always go to a movie theater and he would knock on the thing and he was like, is the manager in? And he would stand there and be like, how's the show going? And is it good? And he would wait until the manager was like, do you want to come in? And he would go, okay. Now, we would have sandwiches under our armpits, you know what I mean? So we would get a free movie, and we'd have a meal. You know, so that was part of it, you know. But
that's what I mean. It sounds very complicated because you loved him so much. But as a man, you have to have some sense of, like, wanting to have your identity.
There's positives and negatives. Yeah. When I walk into an audition room, okay, Dom DeLuise's son is coming in, right? He's going to be funny. So sometimes you go, hi, how are you? And they go, you're just like your dad. And then sometimes you walk in and you go, hi, and they go, you're not as funny as your dad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's good, and then there's, like, I have to overcome certain judgments because he has big shoes to fill. When I was doing Wizards, it was pretty successful. It was before he passed away, and I was able to direct my first episode, and I got to show it to him before he passed away. So I was really I was really proud of myself that I was able to show him that I was, happy and successful in what I love to do. So.
And did he acknowledge it, or did he?
Oh yeah, he was always so proud. He was very happy. For all of my brother Peter was on 21 Jump Street. Now
they have it on Hulu now.
Oh really?
Yes.
And that's so funny. He's directing now. He does a bunch of shows up in Canada. He did Stargate, and my brother Michael did NYPD Blue and a lot of movies, and we all were.
And you all
working.
chose that business too. It's funny because nobody chose something different. And a lot of times, like a kid will be like, "I'm going to be a doctor. I can't take this."
Yeah, no, of course. Well, we made home movies. Mm-hmm. We definitely were interested, and Michael was really the first one. I mean, we did play production in school and stuff, but Michael was the first one who was like, "I want an agent," at like 10. And my dad said, "You can always have a childhood. No, you can always have a career. You can always get into this business, but you can only have a childhood once. Why don't you focus on that?" So right about like later on in high school, I did a couple of commercials. Michael actually did a couple of sitcoms, one with Scott Bakula, one with Danny Thomas, and he was, he was pretty successful right away. But it was nice that we got to be, we went to public school. I went to Pali High, and it was, I thought, a very good idea. Now, I did work slightly with him. Like, he did a TV movie, and I played his son. And, there were some moments where, we were on the set all the time. We were, like when he did the Muppet movie, we were there. And when he did Cannonball Run, we went to the set. I was experiencing it, but I wasn't in front of the camera yet. But I was learning at a young age what, I was watching him, what he did.
But it's funny because you're all boys too. There's 3 boys and you all did with your dad. It's like a connection to you. I'm always fascinated with that, like what drives people in their life. And it's like you guys are all boys. You loved being around your dad. There was often times that he was taken away because of his career. So why not do what he does to make it a connection?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think if we didn't enjoy it, we would have gotten into it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You guys all funny? I never met your brothers, so are they funny too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter's Switzerland. My older brother is like...
neutral.
He's neutral. He's very funny when he directs. And his most of his work was dramatic stuff. And so was... Michael did comedy in the beginning and then kind of segued into being serious. Both very talented actors. And now Peter's a great director, And when we get together, I'm an adult. Right. I have 2 kids.
Right.
I had a mortgage. Now I'm renting, but it's like I do like
you kill me.
I do grown up stuff.
Right.
But when I get together with my brothers, I'm the little.
I was just going to ask you that. Oh my God, we're so on the same wavelength.
I get right into the dynamic of being the annoying little brother.
I was literally, that was my next investigative reportive question. I was going to ask you. So you're the baby of the family. Do you have that personality? Yes, you do. I can attest to that.
I have to stop myself from being, like annoying. And I embarrass my kids all the time. Not on purpose, but, I'm goofy. So they're like, ugh. But I ask them all the time. I was like, would you prefer a normal, regular father, or are you happy with me? And there's always a long pause. And then they go, we want a normal father.
Too.
Yeah.
The girls are awesome.
They do. They have a great sense of humor.
But the baby of the family gets taken care of.
Yeah.
Come on.
Taken care of? What do you mean?
Your whole life, you get taken care of more than the rest of the people. Usually, that's you. I'm stereotyping, but usually the baby.
As a parent, your first child, you totally fuck up with. You kind of fuck up the second one, and then you know what you're doing by the third.
Is that how you made it up? Yeah. Is that how it works? That sounds like a great story.
Well, that's my perception.
I like it. But I mean, in terms of like, does Peter help you out? Does Mike? Is he like your?
Yeah, like Yeah, I mean, I started directing, and I called my brother, and I do multi-camera, and he does typically single camera, and I might be doing some single camera stuff, and I was asking him questions, and I did a couple of Stargates, so I got to watch him direct, and his best advice to me about directing was two things. Be decisive. If a prop guy comes up to you and says, you want this mug or this mug? You just go that mug, because you can always change it later, you know? And then he says, getting the information across to the actors or to anybody on the set as quickly and as concise as possible. Because you don't want to stay, you know, like, let's sit here and talk for 10 minutes about your motivation.
Right.
You know? So it's a matter of managing your time and being fun. Right. People want to work with someone who's enjoyable, you know?
Now, wait a minute, but so that's hard. Stereotypically, guys have a hard time communicating. That's one of the hardest...
I can't understand what you're saying.
I'm not saying you. This is not... I don't have a hidden agenda. Wouldn't that be funny if I was like, and by the way, that one time when you didn't call me... No, I mean, it's hard to... What you're saying, what your brother's telling you to do, is usually what guys have a very hard time figuring out what they want to say, saying it without...
I think I am a good communicator, and, you know, I'm all about I statements, and, you know, and I do my best job. You know, like, my parents took me to EST a long time ago, which was like, you know, a way of, like, getting to know yourself and everything. And, you know, my dad was all about talking things out, talking, you know, your feelings out, you know, or forcing your feelings out.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just him. Now, my father was fascinated with people. So if we took a cab from our house to the airport,
he would talk to him.
He would talk to the guy. You would know what his father did, where he was in his family, how he felt about his family, if he escaped from his country, if he's trying to bring his family back up. In 20 minutes, we would always get someone's life story. He was interested and fascinated with people.
I am too.
Yeah,
that's why I did the podcast, because I love, and I think that may be why everybody remembers him, because there is something about having the exchange with somebody that they remember you.
Yeah, and he was completely present,
and he was generous. There's a generosity to that.
Yeah, and he wasn't like, "How are you?"
Right.
You know, and they would say good, and he would say great. He would really genuinely ask someone how they are and talk to them. You know.
But as a kid, you could be like, "All right, Dad, do we have to talk to everybody?"
Sure. But now I do that.
You do? Yeah. Isn't that funny?
There are definitely good parts and bad parts about being my father's clone or whatever. Mm-hmm. Being able to be funny is nice and make people laugh and feel good. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's certain things that... It's so weird. My dad would have, like, sneezing fits. Uh-huh. And I was like, would you... I know it's, like, not... on purpose, but would you stop? And then I had a sneezing fit the other day, and I was like, I'm exactly like him. I'm doing what he did that annoyed me, and I don't like it, you know.
Do you know that they say that sneezing is the closest thing you can get to having an orgasm?
I want to sneeze right now.
That was just a little sniglet. Fun-filled, useless fact.
I like it.
So if you were having a sneezing fit, you must have felt like $1 million afterwards.
Not so much.
Funny that he talked about feeling so much, but then he had the food stuff, because a lot of times the food is to stuff the feeling. So he was a very, very intricate, complicated guy.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing was this. He was always there for others, not so much for himself. Mm-hmm. Like, he would cook for 20 people, and then he would defrost a 20-year-old frozen dinner and eat it because he didn't want it to go to waste. Mm-hmm. But that's what he, kind of felt his value was sometimes. I mean, a lot of comedians are self-deprecating, Robin Williams doing all those drugs and everything. And there's a lot of comedians that die because they're unhappy doing, stuff. But they're, oh my God, we see them and we're like, he's so funny. Right. He must be so joyful and everything. But, sometimes they're funny in real life. And then sometimes they're kind of miserable, and out of their misery comes comedy. Like Larry David.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that he's super neurotic in his real life,
right,
which is fucking hysterical
on TV.
But to live with like him might not be so much fun.
Well, it's funny because the other night we did this podcast. We did Jackie Kashian's podcast, and the two comics that were there. So one of them, he had just moved from Chicago, and his wife and kids were still back there, and all I said to him was, he was telling me about it, and all I said to him was like, oh, you have a great wife there. That's really kind of her to do that, to support you. And it made sense, because if he just stays in Chicago, he wants to come out here and try to get a writing job. So it was a big risk. And he said, Sue, thank you so much for listening to me, or letting me talk about myself. And I was like, oh my God, has the world come to that people feel like they can't even... he didn't talk about himself for a long time. It was just I was genuinely interested in what he was doing.
Right.
And then the other guy, Jackie, was giving out T-shirts, and he picked up one, and he was like, oh, and then the other one. I was like, oh, the other one, that looks more like you or something. He goes, why, do you want this one? And I was like, no, I meant that would look good on you. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, to live like that.
Well, also, I mean, there's exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, if you critique someone, like, yeah, I didn't really dig that. We go, oh, I know, it was awful, right? We take it in right away. Right. But if you say to someone, God, that was amazing, they're like, no, I don't. We don't take in the positive, generally speaking. So if we took in the positive a little more, it would be better. But I really do feel that if you're at peace with yourself and you feel good about you, then you can feel good about someone else. Then you can take that in and say, oh, thank you. But
it was interesting. It was like almost like a sign of the times in a way, because I was like, oh, both these guys both interpreted it. Maybe it's just the comedians, I don't know, but I just thought it was interesting that they just thought... I feel like everybody does talk a lot about themselves, which brings us back to us talking about the Facebook and everything. Why do people like the podcast? Because really, all it is two people talking or a couple people talking, and it's like, I think the isolation of it, they like to hear the intimacy, they're dying for it.
Right.
And I was talking to this guy, what was his name? Peter? The guy who played the father on Seventh Heaven.
I don't know his name.
Steven, his name is not Peter at all. Steven with the PH. I forget his last name. But I was talking to him yesterday about, because I did a piece of my one-woman show at this Woman Who Writes thing, and he was there, and I was telling him how I definitely think that people have an aversion to true pleasure. I don't mean what's that?
Are you talking about orgasms again?
Sneezing. I'm talking about sneezing. Achoo! No, I just mean true, peace, being... I don't mean hedonism, I don't mean all the crazy stuff that people do to think them. I'm talking about actually being able to tolerate the feeling of love and pleasure, just to be able to sit still with, somebody saying to you, you're awesome, and being
it also depends, I think, on what your upbringing is, what is learned. A kid who's being abused, my father loves me and he shows me by hitting me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go out there, and if someone hits me, they love me.
Well, sometimes, it's a connection, or it's like, I can't tolerate the feeling, so just hit me. I can't... do you want
me to hit you right now?
Imagine if you did. That would be the best podcast ever. And then I'd sue you. And I'd you're only renting now.
Very good. Yeah, right. Is that just awful?
No, I love it. I love that you did what you need to do and you're taking care of business. I love it.
Well, it's like... there's a direction that's outside of me, mm-hmm. that is showing me my path, mm-hmm. and either I choose to follow it or I force it to happen. Mm-hmm. So I could have tried even harder to hold on to my house, but it was time to go somewhere else.
But then what I find for myself, when I handle something like that, I feel 50,000 times better that I handled it than if I was just sitting in my house worrying, can I just keep my house?
I agree with you. My thought process is we can participate. It's not so much like this is what I'm going to make happen no matter what. But if you try to make something happen and another opportunity opens up and you don't look at it or investigate that, then you're not going with the flow of life. You're not going with the flow of life.
Well, and also I have the thing...
Deep Thoughts by David DeLuise.
Well, it's true, though, because if you think about fear, when you have an opportunity to choose fear or hope, if you choose fear, you're going to make it happen. You're going to make bad stuff happen. I'm not saying that everybody makes everything that's bad happen, but if you're in a situation where...
I just got very afraid.
You did?
No, I'm kidding.
So all right, so what are you saying? You could have picked hope or fear. Now I'm making you nervous?
No, I just was joking. Yes.
You can make it happen if you pick the fear.
Here's my thing.
If you're like, I'm afraid, you're going to make it happen.
There are bad things that happen or that I perceive as bad, right? Mm-hmm. And then typically 3 to 6 months later, I look back on that bad thing and I realize it was a godsend. Like, thank God that happened or else this would not have happened. So remembering that, when something happens that I'm perceiving as bad, ultimately it probably will be a good thing. Now, if you have a car accident or something really happens bad, I mean, you can be in that negative space of like, oh, this is not a great thing. But if I don't question really what's bad or good, because ultimately it all turns out, for the best.
But it's funny because a lot of people that if you really look at people, car accidents or injuries or things that went really bad, a lot of times, like I had a friend in high school who broke her neck. And I saw her on Nantucket this summer, and she told me that they did a study with people with spinal cord injuries and people who won the lottery, and the people with spinal cord injuries were happier.
That's crazy. But backing up what I just said.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, and also, society typically says, get a house, get 2 kids, get 2 cars, get a dog, and you'll be happy.
They say it's American dream.
Well, I've had that. Not so great. Not
You're
so
happy
great.
being on the Kadoozie Kast, and it doesn't cost anything. No, I was watching this movie about happiness last night, and they were saying, and the guys were literally saying that people are, if something bad happens, it's funny because we usually don't feel it for a very long time. But if something good happens, we can't feel it at all. Like if you think, oh my God, I'm so terrified if that had ever happened to me. If my dad ever dies, if this happens, like usually it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. But being able to tolerate the happiness.
Right, like the anticipation of it is not good. And like I said, I didn't want to focus on my dad's death while he was still alive.
Yes.
Because then you miss it.
But I feel like people do that even when their parents are healthy. Everybody's terrified. It's like, well, it's a crazy way to live because everybody dies, but nobody ever really wants to talk about that.
Well, it's funny. A friend of mine, Kevin, had testicular cancer, and he was 36, and he was, doing all the chemo and gamma knife and, all that stuff. And people would be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. And he was like, we all die.
Right.
You could die tomorrow and get hit by a bus, and I could live longer than you, so I'm so sorry for you. You know what I mean?
Because it's like a false pretend like that we're cool or a bit when we're just all just floating around here. And then on the movie they said that this guy has been studying happiness.
And he's miserable?
No, everybody told him that he was crazy. And he made such a good point. He said, well, they've been studying depression since the dawn of day.
Well,
why can you study depression and not happiness?
I believe Norman Cousins had cancer. Mm-hmm. And he was in the hospital, and it really was, we're going to get you better, and we're they're focusing on your sickness rather than focusing on your health. Mm-hmm. And he brought in a TV and a VCR. There used to be something called a VCR player, and it would play videotapes. So he brought in the Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, stuff he loved, and he started laughing. And his idea was, if you laugh and feel happy, there's a certain chemical that happens in your body in the same way that if you work out, your endorphins are kicked in and you actually feel better,
That's what they said in the movie. You're brilliant.
Oh.
I never knew how smart you were. They did, but I thought it was funny that he said that they've been studying depression, but they all thought he was crazy for studying happiness. Like, why? Why?
Well, like I said, we all were fascinated with unhappiness or negativity, but we shun away from happiness.
We've been tricked into that.
I don't know why.
Society with the house and buy this and buy that and do this and then you get
It's happiness. In my opinion, is an internal thing. Mm-hmm. It's not external. Like you can't take your boat and your house and your jet with you.
I always think that when people have big, huge houses and everything, I'm like, you can't take it with you.
Well, I mean, when you're on your deathbed, you're not like, I want to see my boat. Right. I want that, that painting that I got. You want to see your grandkids or your kids or, the people that you love. So Another deep thought by David DeLuise.
No, it's true. I think that people really, everybody that I talk to feels the same way, but nobody knows how to, like, we watch stuff on TV and it literally hurts our body, and people watch it because everybody says it's the greatest thing, and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to watch the greatest thing.
Well, like, reality TV has, look, again, this is just my perception, but if you watch Honey Boo Boo,
yeah,
your life seems great and you seem smart. Like they're not the brightest people and they're doing crazy stuff. Like we love to watch people who are, crazy and doing crazy things, like hoarders. Guys living in filth and shit. Probably sharts twice a day. But my house, be it a little dirty, maybe, I feel good because I'm watching some guy that's, miserable.
But then when you shut that TV off, it doesn't last. That's my whole point is like, if all this stuff worked and everybody was like, I'm completely happy, I'd be like, all right, I'm wrong. But it's not working.
No, I agree. I'm not.
It's like a false thing for 1 second to watch that.
But it takes time. And everybody has their own experience, right? I call it the orange juice test. If your kid is 3, and you continue to pour the orange juice for the kid, they're never going to learn how to do it on their own. So you have to let the kid figure it out and spill some orange juice every once in a while and let them figure it out. So I can tell my daughter till I'm blue in the face, the job, the house, the this, the that is not going to make you happy. It's the relationships that you have in your life that are the most important. And that's what, I have found in my time here, but it took a long time for me to realize that.
But you don't tell her, you show her, you give her a relationship.
Of course, your actions always speak louder than words.
But it takes a long, and I feel like everybody doesn't talk about how it does take a long time. It is hard, and it should take a long time because then it's respectful and you have value for it inside. Like I was saying to my girlfriends last night, being vulnerable for me from where I come from was to the point that literally I felt like when I first would even do it a tiny bit for the rest of the world. Like I remember I called my friend, I texted my friend, some guy, I texted him something. And for me, it was like so sexual. It was so crazy, right? And I called my friend and I was like, oh my God, I texted this thing to this guy and it was so crazy. And so she braced herself like for something like pornographic or something, right? And I remember I told her what I texted and she laughed so hard. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? She's like, Sue, that was like you showed him your ankle.
Well, you have a nice ankle.
But for me, it was huge. I thought it was so, and so I'm like, oh, I must have a little bit of like not knowing how to like expose myself completely. Right. And so we were talking about being vulnerable, and it reminded me of Lawrence Fishburne when I did a movie with him, and he told me at the end of the movie, he's like, Sue, I'm telling you, don't ever stop. He's like, you're amazing. He's like, they don't get you yet. I'm telling you, do not stop. And at the time when he said it to me, I had both feelings. I was beside myself that Lawrence Fishburne was telling me this. Oh, he told me my dramatic ability even far outweighed how funny I was. And I was like, and he's like, just keep going. And at the time I was like, that's the biggest compliment I could ever get. And also, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah. And well, Charles Nelson Riley had a one-man show, and he would talk about certain people in your life are dream droppers. And there was a woman who ran a theater, and him and his best friend would go to the theater all the time. And the woman was his best friend's mom. And they were talking and everything, and they were doing like little skits and stuff. And his friend left the room, and the friend's mom said, you are very funny and very talented. You really need to focus on this. My son, not so much, but you need to go there. Now, he was a family friend. Mm-hmm. So he told me that. He was like, you are funny and special, and everybody is. Mm-hmm. But when somebody you respect says that to you, like Lawrence Fishburne, mm-hmm. it means a lot. I think that's really sweet.
Well, so the point of the story is how I was vulnerable. So he told me that, and so I wrote my one-woman show. And a lot of the reason why I wrote it is because of him, because he told me that, and I was like, all right, what else am I going to do? I have to like do this. And so, and plus, he cast me in that movie. They were auditioning Big Black Men, and he put me in the movie. And it was a small part, but he was hilarious. I remember I said, I'll cut your fucking head off or something. I said fucking, and it wasn't in the script. And then he came over and he was directing and he goes, Costello. I go, what? He goes, I'll fucking cut you. Do it again. And I was like, all right. And he just thought he was so awesome with me. We laughed so hard. And so years later, he was on Broadway doing Thurgood Marshall. And I was like, so you have to go tell him. You have to go tell him. You have to go tell him. And I was so fucking terrified to go tell him. I didn't know if he would remember me. I didn't know any of it. So we went to the show, we bought tickets, and I went to the door, and of course the lady, I want to talk to Lawrence after the show, and she was a horror show to me, like yelled at me, and she's like, all right, come to the door, and then at the end or something. I was like, and then I'm watching the whole show, and I'm like, I can't do it, I'm terrified. And then at the end of the show, then we have to go to the side door, and there's two big, bouncer guys that this is the only control they've ever had in their life, and I'm like, and of course when you're needy like I was so scared, they take it as an opportunity to like shit on you more.
Right.
So I was like, I would like to go see Lawrence, and they're like looking me up and down. They're like, what's your name? And I'm like, Sue Costello. And like, wait a minute. And I'm like, still, I want to run it every second. I'm terrified. So then I leave, and they come in. They go, all right, come on. So now my heart's beating out of my chest, and I'm like, just do it, so just do it. So my friend was with me. We walked up the stairs, and there was a couple leaving his dressing room, and he looks at me, and he goes, get in here, Costello. And I was like, he remembers me. And I walked in, and before I could even say it, I just said to him, Lawrence, I just have to tell you, if no one's ever told you, you changed my life. I'm like, you made me do my one-woman show, and I have to just thank you for it. And my friend was standing, in the hallway, and she said he started crying. She's like, it was so intimate, she had to, step back. She didn't want to, intrude on it. And when I left there, I literally slept for 3 days. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's how much energy it took for me to just be generous with him and go back and fight all the demons in my head. He loved it, because can you imagine? He put me in that movie. Lots of people would be like, oh, I should have got a bigger part. I should have got this. And I was like, no, thank you. And he cried.
That's awesome.
Isn't that cool? But the point of it is that everybody's like, you should do this. You should be given. You have magnets on your door and everything. It's like, no, the process of actually being generous and being vulnerable.
What do you mean magnets?
You know how people put magnets on their door, be great. This is your life.
They have little sayings, right?
Yeah. But
believe in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not a magnet. It has to actually be an internal thing that, is excruciating.
My dad said to my daughter Riley, who had a beautiful voice, I wanted her to sing. She was younger.
She danced with the president, remember?
Yeah. She did a tap dance thing at the Ford Theater. My dad performed at the Ford Theater too. But my dad was like, I want to hear you sing. And she was so sheepish. And it was really interesting because she said, my dad said, you have a gift. You have a beautiful voice and you have a gift. And if you don't share that gift with everyone, then you're being selfish, Mm-hmm. So she sang for him, and it was awesome.
It's funny because, because you don't realize that the worrying and the self-esteem, the low self-esteem is selfish in a way. It's causing more isolation. The more selfish you are, you want all the stuff, so you get greedy. It's actually burying yourself. It's like a total fucked up. But before we have a few more minutes, I want to talk to you about Wizards of Waverly Place. And I just have to tell you, when we take our picture at the end, I'm going to email it to my nieces, and they're going to flip out.
So
sorry, I just spit.
Yeah, we've been off air for about a year and a half or more. And then we just did a Wizards reunion special that's going to be on probably in a couple months. And I was able to ask them to let me direct a couple of other Disney shows, and I just did an episode of Lab Rats, which is about bionic kids, and that was super fun. And it was great to see everybody again, and they're like family. When you work with people intimately like that for 5 years, you become like family. David Henry called me this morning. He's doing a short, and he wrote 2 episodes of Wizards, and now he wrote this short, which is amazing. And I'm going to be in it with him, which awesome. Is so, and I'm so proud of him. He's like my fake son, he's like, thank you so much for doing this. And, it's SAG, but we don't have a lot of money. I was like, David, I am so happy to be a part of what you're doing. And also I do craft service as well.
You want a sandwich?
Yeah.
Have a sandwich.
Exactly. And I do that. I catch myself with my kids. Do you want some food? And they say no. And I said, are you sure? Are you hungry? Do you want some food? And I have to stop myself from not feeding them. But it was really fun. And I actually just was told that Nick at Night is doing a Scott Baio show, See Dad Run, and I'm going to do an episode of that. So it'll be my first, it's about a family, but my first kind of grown-up sitcom where there's not just all kids. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, because you did Christina Applegate show, but you did Third Rock from the Sun.
I did Third Rock from the Sun, Jesse with Christina Applegate, and then I did a bunch of pilots and stuff and guest spots and things.
And you were married with a kid at this point, way back.
Oh, yeah. I was married with a kid by 22, 23.
I don't mean to laugh, but how did you do it? You just winged it?
No, I didn't have a lot of friends at that age that had kids. I went to my father for advice a lot of times, and you just, as long as you're coming from love, you're doing, the right thing. I was out of work for most of that time.
Oh.
So I had a lot of time spent with Riley. We, 24/7. She had two parents the whole time.
That's nice.
Which is great. And then I started getting jobs. I actually booked 6 jobs in a row. Like I went to an audition, got the job. Went to an audition, got the job. And one of those was Third Rock from the Sun. And that turned into, my college education in TV. It was 55 episodes. And, I would just watch Jim Burrows and John Lithgow, Jane Curtin, Bonnie and Terry Turner, it was Carsey Warner. I mean, I was right in the center of, TV happening. And I was able to learn so much.
But see, that's great. That's a testament to who you are, too. You took advantage of that and learned from it instead of taking it for granted. Because you could have taken it for granted. I mean, you were Dom DeLuise's son.
Yeah, no, I loved it. It was fun. Look, because I didn't take it for granted, it's not me. It was my dad saying, look, my dad loved this business. Mm-hmm. He loved performing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're working and you have an audition and you go during lunch and you have your makeup on, I'm like, sorry, I have to get in and out. My dad would say, go to the audition. You're not working. Put on makeup because they love something they can't have.
Yeah? Well, that's a good trick. And then they think that you're working.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. So whenever I see you with makeup on, I'll be like, oh, he's faking this.
Exactly.
And Dan Naturman's hanging around. Oh, but he's going to kill me for that, but I don't care. He went on the date with us. All right, so is there anything else that you want to share with us about David DeLuise? It sounds like you're in a good place. You like the directing?
I like the directing. I like the being creative. The past year, I'm writing a suspense movie. I've written 2 sitcoms. I'm pitching reality shows. I'm pitching a reality show to MTV today.
Awesome.
And I'm doing what I love to do.
Is your reality TV show going to make me feel better about myself, I hope?
We'll see.
Oh, he's being top secret. He won't tell me. That was very evasive. All right, so good. So you loved Wizards of Waverly Place. How many years did that run?
We did 109 episodes.
Wow.
And yeah, I loved it. It was a great job. The day before they called me, I auditioned for it, and then they wanted me to do it, and I was like, oh, there's not a lot of money, and back in that time, it was like, I'm going to be a dad on a Disney show. Like, I'm going to be like, watch what you do. And at the end, I told you so,
Right.
But they came to me and I said to my buddy Louie, I was like, I just want a job. Mm-hmm. I just want some security. I just want to say, hey, Ralph, on the how you doing? How's the kids? And a place to hang my hat. Mm-hmm. And then the next day I got a call and they offered me the show, and I was super happy to do that. And now the residual effect of that is that kids come up to me and they're like, oh, I wish you were my dad, and they're super sweet. And I've been offered now quite a few jobs because of that. That's the residual effect, which is awesome.
And your kids are going, yeah, we want a regular dad.
Exactly.
All right, let's tell them what your Twitter is and your Instagram and everything.
I'm D_DeLuise on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And Instagram is my name, David DeLuise.
And what about Facebook? Same thing?
I don't have a public Facebook.
Oh, you don't?
I just have...
What about all your fans? You're probably blocking a lot of fans.
What can they not see on Instagram or...
You're right.
You're
right.
I tweet and I Instagram-ish. I think that's all I can do for right now.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for talking with me.
Thank you. It was nice. And everyone, have a fantastic day.
And we're out.